Well, the IEC says it is pleased with voter registration despite delays at some of its voting stations. This due to service delivery protests. Well, some community members wanted to use voter registration weekend to draw attention to their issues. And meanwhile, the EFF also claims that ANC supporters had tried to intimidate its leader, Julius Malema, on his campaign train just outside of Pietermaritzburg in KwaZulu-Natal. So to talk more about voter registration weekend, let's reflect on this with political analyst Mr. Levy Ndou, who joins us now for this conversation. Mr. Levy, thank you for your time and good morning to you. I mean, in your perspective, how do you think the voter registration weekend went? We know of the service delivery protests that took place, the president promising to address them in Soweto, but overall, what's your perspective on this past weekend?
Good morning to Melo. Good morning to the viewers at home. Well, I think now we are in the full swing for both registration, campaigning, and ultimately elections on the 1st of November. You will recall that a few months ago, there were concerns by some sectors of the South African society who were saying that they couldn't register to vote because of a number of reasons, and that was actually echoed by the IEC itself. And as expected, the IEC wanted at least over 500,000 numbers of registrations, and that actually happened. And I think this should be seen for me as a right direction towards strengthening our democracy in South Africa. And of course, there are few pockets where there were instances of protests and people trying to show their displeasure about what is happening in society. And with me, we need to look at it in the context of citizens that are trying very hard to get access to leaders that are mostly not available and trying to raise concerns on matters that affects them. And for me, it should, on the part of government or officials, it should be seen as part of consultation and participation on the part of the frustrated citizens of South Africa who don't seem to see their leaders when they need them most.
Right. Do you think the protests and the protesters trying to draw attention, obviously using this voter registration drive, do you think that was a success, given that, President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as ANC president, did promise those residents in Soweto that he would do something about it? Or do you think it's more of what happens around, compelled trains? Promises are made, protests do occur, but really do we see tangible results after, such protests do occur during either voter registration drives or even during elections?
Well, I think first of all, the protest went well because the protesters were able to draw the attention of the leaders, and not only at local level, but at the highest office. But it is also, it also sends a message to the president and those that are above local government that there are certain things that are not right, that citizens are actually not happy about. What we should also be asking ourselves, a big question will be that, why do we have citizens still complaining about electricity, water, and refuse removal? That then sends a message to those that are given responsibilities to govern that they don't seem to be doing enough to the satisfaction of ordinary citizens. And that will require political parties themselves to field or send in candidates that are going to work in the best interest of the citizens, and it require, when necessary, reshufflement of local leaders.
Right. I mean, other tragic news that also happened this past weekend, Mr. Ndou, is the untimely passing of the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Mr. Jolodi Matongo. We had a conversation with him just last week about some of the plans the ANC have to ensure that they, of course, do all they can for the city of Johannesburg. Obviously, he did mention at the time that he will see from his party, if he is elected to be a candidate again, to be mayor of the city of Johannesburg. What blow and impact do you think this has had, particularly on the ANC, given that he was on that same compelled trail with the president in Soweto, unfortunately on the day that he met his passing?
These are sad news, and I think not only for the ANC, but for the people of Johannesburg and South Africa in general. Obviously, the passing of the mayor of Johannesburg has an impact on the plans of the ANC in terms of how they wanted to run the city of Johannesburg. The reason that the ANC had forwarded him and indeed ending up being elected by council is an indication that they trust in him, and of course they might have had plans for the future that he has to implement. It has an impact on the ANC and council, and I think the ANC might then be able to find ways and means to get a replacement for him. Difficult as it is, life has to go on, but for the family and the people of Johannesburg and the ANC, of course, I know these are very sad news, and we really send our sympathies to the family.